beep boop, beep boop. A Just the Network production. Beep boop boop. That sounds good. Take it away, me. Hello, Gistners, and welcome to Just the Gist. I'm your host, Rosie Waterland, and in this podcast, I tell entertaining stories about anything and everything, but with just the gist of what you need to know to help you sound impressive at a dinner party. Gisting in every week is the JTG production team and you guys, the Gistners. So, let's get gisting. Back in the 1980s. Disney commissioned a kids' movie that had production involvement from George Lucas, Steven Spielberg, and Francis Ford Coppola.
Oh, big guns.
I know. It was directed by Walter Murch, a man who had won an Oscar for his work on Apocalypse Now. And with that pedigree, you'd think it would be a slam dunk. But when the movie was released, parents stormed out of cinemas with their kids saying it was more like a horror movie than something made for children. It bombed at the time, but has since become a cult classic, including one that my sisters and I loved when we were kids. This is just the gist of the 1985 sequel to The Wizard of Oz, Return to Oz.
Ah, iconic.
One of the best movies of all time.
Really, I didn't know there was a backstory to this because, like, we've had discussions like, how did this get made?
Yeah.
Because it's kind of like the ultimate, like, bait and switch when you've got The Wizard of Oz and it's like bright, colorful songs, quite campy, musical, and then the sequel, which is like Saw. It's like if Saw was Toy Story 2.
Well, I mean, we'll get into it, obviously, but the thing is, it was never meant to be like a classic sequel.
Yeah.
You know?
Obviously.
It was never meant to be a classic sequel. A lot went on that meant it was what the director had initially intended and the guy who made the movie, but there was a lot of confusion from everyone else that is what it was meant to be.
You think Wizard of Oz?
I mean,
you think family-friendly film?
Yeah, the Return to Oz is. Did you watch it when you were a kid?
No.
No?
I don't have strong memories of it.
Well, it was one that my older sister Rhiannon and we had the VHS of it. So you know when you have a few VHSs and so you watch that stuff again and again. We had like Milo and Otis.
Ooh.
We had Labyrinth.
Ooh.
We had
also quite scary. And
yeah,
dark.
also quite scary. We had the Dark Crystal.
Yeah, dark. Yep.
We had Willow.
This kind of really explains your childhood.
Yeah, and we had The Little Mermaid, and we had
nice.
Return to Oz because I think my parents were, you know, they were what they were.
They made some interesting choices.
Read my memoir if you like, but I think also just stripping away all of that other stuff, if you look at them just as like regular parents, they were kind of cool and liked being a bit subversive, and I think that they would have liked that people like sort of pearl clutching Karens were like, oh no, these movies are too much for kids. My parents would have been like, not for our kids. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's why we had all these kinds of movies. But I got to be honest, like a lot of them did petrify me. There's a lot in this movie, in Return to Oz, that petrified me. I will say though that The Wizard of Oz scared me. I didn't like The Wizard of Oz.
What was scary about The Wizard of Oz? I found the tree scary.
Yeah, the Wizard of Oz and Mary Poppins had the same feeling to me. It was like an eeriness.
Mary Poppins?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was like a loneliness, an eeriness, a kind of I can't explain it. Those movies used to make me feel lonely.
Really?
I don't know what it is. Return to Oz was scary, but it didn't give me that weird melancholy feeling that those movies did.
How odd.
Yeah, so I'm very excited to give you just the gist of what went down and how this movie bombed at the time. Walter Murch never directed another movie.
Wow.
Has won a bunch of Oscars, though, for other work that he does. But actually, people admit now, even though it was even critically eviscerated at the time by a lot of people, most critics now say that it's an incredible movie. It's like a really beautiful work of art, and it's a cult classic, you know, amongst people who watched it when they were kids like my age, like elder millennials, but also just as a piece of that kind of darker children's cinema, like those other movies that I mentioned, like Labyrinth and all those kinds of things. This is one of those. This is up there with the best.
Yeah.
And so
Like we watched it recently, and I remember watching it like.
I
And it was
made
probably
you watch it.
You made me, you forced me. But it was probably the first time that I'd watched it as an adult, and I was like, oh, I really can appreciate this and the storytelling and the world they're built.
Yeah.
Whereas as a kid, I think, you know, probably the one brief time I watched it thinking, this isn't the Wizard of Oz. Oh, what's this?
Yeah, because it's
jarring,
different and jarring.
so different.
Because
and
it's faithful to the books.
Yes.
Yeah, so we'll get into it. But it is very different. I think a lot of people were confused, and it has a lot to do with the marketing and a whole bunch of stuff, but we're gonna get into it.
It's
Just the
wild.
gist, because I think with Wicked out, and Wicked is also its own kind of adjacent to the Oz universe, but not quite
Not canon.
of it, not canon, but uses some canon parts. And with this, you know, second Wicked movie out this week, I was like, you know what, this is the perfect, I've been wanting to do Return to Oz forever. This is the perfect time. There's a lot in Return to Oz that kind of matches better with Wicked than with The Wizard of Oz.
Oh, interesting.
Even though Return to Oz isn't a musical. But yeah, this just felt like the best time to do it. So I'm so excited to give you just the gist of Return to Oz.
I'm excited.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Oh, and we also have to say, big news for us.
Big news for us.
We got named as one of Apple Podcasts' best podcasts of 2025.
Yay!
Yay! Go Just the Gist!
I know. We've already been like relaunched for what, 3-4 months?
I literally can't. I nearly cried because, yeah, like you said, we relaunched 3 months ago, and it was just a couple of days ago that we passed 500,000 downloads. We're already past 500,000, which I thought was going to take us much longer because we're building up again from scratch. And it's thanks to you guys. Thanks for listening.
Yeah.
And so not only have we passed 500,000 downloads in the few months since launch, we are now one of Apple Podcasts' best podcasts of the year. And this is a prestigious list. There is only 10 podcasts on the list for Australia, New Zealand. Like, it's for our, like, this region. And we are one of them. And on the list with us is Amy Poehler's new podcast, Good Hang.
She's okay.
I know, she's okay. There's Mark Fennell's No One Saw It Coming. There is Fwens with Georgia, Kyron, and Reese Nicholson, who I love that podcast so much. There's also the Gina podcast from The Guardian, which I loved.
About that one, yeah.
We are in very fancy company here. I'm so
Who'd let us in?
so flattered. And it says, okay, listen to this. Throughout the year, Apple Podcasts editors hand curate and feature the absolute best programming on our platform. 2025 was an incredible year for podcasting, and to celebrate, we've assembled 10 unforgettable listens that truly represent the best of the best. From captivating storytelling, I think that's us, to hilarious conversations and inspiring insights, these are the shows that will have you sharing, laughing, reflecting, and on the edge of your seat, dive in and explore the best of 2025. And we're on that list.
Any favorite episodes of ours that you would particularly recommend to any new listeners?
Well, I will say I was I embarrassed? I did laugh when word came through that we had been put on this prestigious list, and it was the same day that our episode about the man with a penis on his arm came out. I was like, is that the one I want at the top of the list, with people going to?
Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
A lot of people new people coming to Click. I mean, yeah, it's a great story. I would say the Blair Witch Project was one of my favorite ones, just the gist of the Blair Witch Project. It was an unexpected one, but the episode we did giving just the gist of that article, the New York Times Magazine article about Mary Beth Lewis and her 16,000 children.
16,000 children, yeah.
What about you?
My favorite is probably like a dark horse is the Dave Matthews Band bus incident.
Yes.
If you haven't heard that one already, go and give that one a listen. It is amazing.
I'm just going through our list now. Gosh, we've put out a lot of podcasts in the last few months. We've been working really hard, the team, like me, James, Kate Lever, Haley Stavely, and the guys at Acast, Guy and Simon. Like, we've been working so hard and this is just really lovely.
It's really lovely.
And the one who's worked the hardest is Pocket. He
Yes,
really has.
yeah.
Yeah, assistant podcast producer Pocket.
He's our woo boy.
He's our woo boy. And so, yeah, this is just, I'm so chuffed about it.
Thank you,
so
everyone.
chuffed. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Apple.
Yay.
Yay. Okay, here we go. Just the gist of Return to Oz. So I thought I would start by giving you basically a recap of the movie.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. I'll give you a recap of the movie and then I'll give you just the gist of sort of how it came to be and what happened and how the bizarre thing I just explained to you came about because it's bizarre. And I was like, there's no way to really sort of go about this except to just be like, here is how weird this movie is. Okay.
Amazing.
Which you can, by the way, watch it on Disney Plus. I don't think they tell anyone about it though because they don't want people to know.
They should be spruiking it
I
while
think
Wicked is
so
coming out.
too.
They should be like, this is our moment.
I think so too. Okay, here we go. So, Return to Oz. The film is set in 1900 and it's 6 months after Dorothy had been to Oz and then returned. Like, at the end of Return to Oz, she wakes up and she's like, and you were there and you were there and there was stuff. And they're all like, ah. So we're kind of 6 months after that. Dorothy in this version, in Return to Oz, because it's more faithful to the books, Dorothy in this version is 9 years old.
Yeah.
Because in the books, Dorothy was like a 9-10-year-old. And she's played in the movie by the brilliant Firuza Balk, who at the time was 9. It was her very first film role. Most people would know her as the actress who went on to be in The Craft.
Mm-hmm. Everyone, all the elder millennials know The Craft.
The Craft or Waterboy. She played the love interest in Waterboy. So she's amazing. And just think of like her face and her vibe and her expressiveness as an adult actress. Like as a kid, she just had like, she had that face,
Incredible,
these
yeah.
like big eyes and this like expressive kind of face. But there's a sort of darkness to her. She seems like a weird little kid.
She would have made an amazing Wednesday Addams.
Yes, but she's playing Dorothy, which very much suits Return to Oz. You know what I mean? So we open on like a very realistic take of 1900 in Kansas, and Dorothy is living with her Aunt Em and Uncle Henry, and the tornado that had blown the house away in The Wizard of Oz had actually blown their house away. So we open in this setting where they're kind of effed because they lost their house. Like after Wizard of Oz ends, it's like there's practical implications to what just happened. You know what I mean?
The tone is different.
Yes. So they've lost their house. They're living in like poverty in rural Kansas. They have no money. They're having to rebuild a house at a time when America was in a really bad recession for poor people. I mean, in interviews that I've read with Walter Murch, he's very much a details guy, and he talked about how he really looked into the timing of the film because the books, the original Oz books, were written in 1900 and then I think 1904 and 1906 or something. And he's like, so I wanted to set it then. And that was a time when things were amazing for people at the top, like Gilded Age kind of coming out of the Gilded Age. There were people who the top 1% had all the wealth and everybody else was a bit effed. So not dissimilar to today, but he wanted to sort of get that across in how we see Dorothy and her family. So their new house is half built on their farm. It's freezing. To make matters worse, like they have to rebuild the house themselves because they don't have any money to pay anyone. But Uncle Henry broke his leg in the tornado, so that's holding things up. And our very first scene is Dorothy, and she's lying in bed late at night and her eyes are wide open and she looks really tired. And it turns out that she has been an insomniac, a 9-year-old insomniac, since she got back from Oz because everybody thinks that she's a total nutter.
It's trauma.
Everybody thinks she's a total nutter.
Yeah.
So she has been telling them about Oz and this wizard and this scarecrow and this Tin Man and her friends in this place. And they're all like, Dorothy, we can barely fucking afford to eat. You need to shut up about this Oz thing. Like there was a tornado. It destroyed everything. We found you in a field a bit later. You didn't go to Oz. You're sounding nuts. And from her bed, Dorothy hears Henry and Em talking about how they're so worried about her being insane and delusional that they've borrowed money from Em's sister to take Dorothy to get specialist psychiatric treatment.
Ooh, spooky.
Which in 1900 means that the next day Aunt Em is planning to take Dorothy to a psychiatrist who does electroshock therapy. Like this isn't, you know, I'm reminding you again, this was marketed as a movie for kids and as a sequel to The Wizard of Oz.
I feel like any parent in that moment would be like,
what is happening?
Hey.
Yeah. So, I mean, in 1900, electricity was still pretty new for like wealthier people had it, but poorer people, it was not even a factor in their lives. But for wealthier people, electricity was like fun and exciting, and they were like figuring out all these amazing new like wacky things they could do with it. It's a big theme in Frank Baum's books about Oz. He's really into. I think that's where like the wizard and all his like contraptions and stuff comes from, because Frank Baum was really interested in that stuff. And one of the ways electricity was being used in new sort of inventive ways in 1900 was in psychiatry and in medicine. And so electroshock therapy is part of this movie. So,
as it should in any children's movie.
Yeah, that night, knowing that the next day she's going to be taken to essentially an insane asylum, Dorothy, because she's an insomniac, she can't sleep, she's lying in bed and she sees a shooting star. And the next day she finds a key in the dirt while she's looking for eggs. And she's convinced it's a key from Oz because the like top of the key, where it's normally like the decorative part or whatever, it's a little like circle with a diagonal line through it, which is kind of innocuous because it's like, is it just a little circle with a line? But to her, it's an O
and a Z.
And a Z.
Yeah.
So she tries to tell Aunt Em. She's like, Aunt Em, look, it's a key from Oz. And Aunt Em's like, stop saying this crazy shit.
Yeah.
Like, you're going to the nut house today. And I remember this scene really stuck with me. I'm about to like recite this little scene to you. It really demonstrates kind of how adult this movie is. And I remember understanding this scene at the time as a kid because my dad was such a bad alcoholic, and there was always this sense of with other adults around me, like sort of talking to my sister and I, like you understand more grown up things than you should, kind of thing. And so in this scene, Dorothy's trying to tell her Aunt Em about this key, and Dorothy's worried that her friends in Oz are in trouble, and that's why they've sent her this key. And Aunt Em goes, "What have I told you?" And Dorothy goes, "Not to talk about Oz." "But Aunt Em, my friends are in trouble. I know it." And Aunt Em just gets the shits and she goes, "We are in trouble, Dorothy. Lost the old house in the tornado. Never even had one mortgage. Now we might need two. Winter's coming on. New house isn't finished." And she looks over at Henry, who's like sitting on the porch in a rocking chair with his leg up. And she just kind of sighs and rolls her eyes annoyed. And Dorothy goes, "He broke his leg, Aunt Em." And Aunt Em goes, "Tornado was 6 months ago, Dorothy. That leg is mended. It's mended." And I remember that scene just being like, oh, there's something going on between the adults. His leg isn't really broken anymore. He's just depressed. She's trying to tell Dorothy that she thinks her husband is useless. Like it's already just so grown up.
Yeah,
this movie.
It really is.
Yeah. So Em takes Dorothy in this horse and carriage to Dr. Worley's sanatorium. And of course, this place is scary. It's like a big old Gothic looking kind of mansion house. Dr. Worley's super creepy, and there's a head nurse who looks like an actual witch. She's terrifying, and she has the like 1900s pointy black shouldered dress, which I always found petrifying as a kid. And then Aunt Em leaves Dorothy there. So they kind of try to explain it in the movie. Aunt Em's like, "Oh, I thought this would only take an afternoon." And they're like, "No, it's going to take longer." And she's like, "Oh, I have to get back to Henry then, so I guess I'll leave her here overnight at this spooky place with these weird people." And so essentially Dorothy is going to get electroshock therapy that night, and Aunt Em's going to come pick her up in the morning. And Dorothy gets marched off by the scary nurse to this room. And while she's walking down this like bare, scary hallway with all these doors, you can hear like muffled screams.
Yeah.
Like there's other people in this insane asylum or whatever. Like it is scary.
Can I ask a really weird question?
Yeah.
What happened to Dorothy's parents? Like, why is there any kind of like story about
I'm not sure
why she lives with them? I never thought to ask that ever.
I don't know. And then I noticed as well, because Aunt Em says, like, we're borrowing money off my sister to send Dorothy to this fancy psychiatrist.
Oh.
So, like, if she's her auntie, maybe it's another. I don't know.
Interesting.
This is
Okay.
just the gist.
Yeah.
But maybe we never know. I don't know if it's in the books or if
Yeah,
it's
it just seems
canon
like a strange detail to have in there that she
Yeah.
lives with her aunt and uncle, but with
yeah.
zero context.
So, there's muffled screams down this hallway, and as they're walking towards her room, there's like weird looking men in white coats wheeling like gurneys around. And the nurse takes Dorothy to this room, and it's this bare room. It just has a bed and a mirror and a tiny window. And she's told, like, you can take a nap if you want. We'll come get you when we're ready. And they just shut the door and leave her in there. And that scene also really got to me as a kid. Maybe this is why I love this movie. But, like, I knew as a kid how it felt to be like totally at the mercy of the adults around you and whatever they decide. Like she's just like her Aunt Em takes her there. She gets left with these people. Then these people just put her in this room and they're like, just wait here until we're ready for you. And so then she's just sitting there. And I was like, man, the amount of times in my childhood that I was just put in random rooms and told to wait and wasn't sure where I'd be going next. And
I feel like you would have watched this film just being like, yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah, like you're on your own.
I'm relating a lot to
You're on your
Dorothy
own,
and
yeah.
The Return to Oz, yeah.
And Walter Murch has said some really thoughtful things about, you know, how he doesn't look down on kids or want to patronize to them. And he knows that there are times that you feel like you're alone.
Yeah.
And particularly, he's like, and not even because the adults have made bad decisions. Like Aunt Em thought she was doing the right thing, leaving her there. But it's like it was the wrong thing, and adults don't listen to you. They don't take you seriously, and you have to do what they say. And that's not. And sometimes, you know, I think it was really important to him to make a movie that didn't patronize kids.
Yeah.
And I think and reading him say that in interviews, I was like, man, you achieved that because this really resonated with me when I was a kid, just like that side of it. So she's just sitting there in the room like, well, I guess I'll just wait till they shock my brain. And all of a sudden a little girl appears in a white dress and she has no shoes on. And she gives Dorothy like this Halloween pumpkin. She's like, it's Halloween soon, so it has a little face. And then they're like having a little chat. And then all of a sudden there's like a storm going on and there's thunder and you can hear screaming. And she's like, I've got to go. And Dorothy like just looks away for 1 second and then she's gone. Like she's just gone. And so it's like, ooh, who was that? So the scary nurse eventually comes back with the scary men in white coats wheeling the gurney, and they strap Dorothy down on this gurney and they take her to this room, and Dr. Worley is there with a big scary looking like electrical machine, and it kind of looks like a face. It has all these knobs and buttons and he's like, we're going to put this stuff on your head and then we're going to wind this up and then we're going to press this button. And then he's like, and then you won't remember Oz anymore. Like you will be able to sleep and you'll be a normal little girl. And it's really scary. And, you know, the nurse is scary and they put her on the thing and they're winding everything up and there's a storm going on and it's all building and there's this big button that says like main switch. And right when the doctor's about to press it, there's this huge clap of thunder and like a shock of lightning and all the power goes out. Like, so she's literally saved by this like blackout, I guess. And when the power goes out, the screams in the building start to get really loud. And so the nurse says to the doctor like, I'll go deal with that. And it's like, yeah, they've got people locked down there or something. And he's going to go check the generator. So they go and they just leave Dorothy there strapped to the gurney in the pitch darkness with this like machine strapped to her head. And then all of a sudden the little girl from earlier turns up and she's like, I've got to get you out of here. And she's like unstrapping Dorothy from the thing. And Dorothy's like, what are the screams? And she's like, they take damaged patients and they lock them in the cellar. We've got to go. We've got to escape. And they're like, oh no. So her and Dorothy like try to escape from the house. And right when they're getting to the front door, the scary nurse sees them. And so they go bolting because they're like, not today, scary pointy shoulder lady. And there is like this raging river out the front of the house. And there's like a huge storm. So it's like really like churny, ragey river. And they're so scared of the nurse that the girl and Dorothy jump into the river and it's like rapid, crazy. And the little girl's she kind of disappears and it seems like she drowns. And Dorothy grabs onto this piece of floating furniture, which kind of turns out to be this wooden crate. And she kind of maneuvers her way into it and lies down and falls asleep as the crate literally floats out to the middle of the ocean.
Wow.
And that is the opening of Return to Oz. Like that is like the first 10, 15 minutes of this movie. It's crazy. this children's movie.
I feel like that nurse is going to get into a lot of trouble as well.
Yeah. So, Dorothy wakes up in the crate and she's in the middle of like a desert and there's sort of water receding around her. So it's kind of like she got floated out there and then this river or ocean, the tide went out and now she's on this like desert land. And it's not really explained, but with her is one of her chickens from the farm. And the chicken is Bellina, and she's talking. She can talk. And there's no explanation for why Bellina is there. Dorothy just goes to her, have you been here all night too? And Bellina goes, I've never been so wet in my life. And there's no other answer. Like, there's no other explanation as to why she's there.
I feel like they needed Bellina for like comedic relief and to
Bellina is
lighten it up a bit.
All of these characters are from the books.
Yeah.
And so this Return to Oz is based on the second two books. So it is kind of a sequel, but considering the first Oz movie didn't stay super faithful to the book, it's like very different.
Yeah.
But Bellina is part of the like original story, and in the original story, Dorothy is traveling with her uncle to Australia, and something goes wrong like on the ship or whatever, and there is a chicken coop, and Bellina's like in there because she's a chicken, and Dorothy gets in the chicken coop to kind of survive, and that's how Bellina ends up part of it all. But in this, they're just like, well, we don't have time for any of that, so we're just saying Bellina's there. Bellina's there. And then Dorothy's like, oh my gosh, well, if you can talk, that means we're in Oz because all animals in Oz can talk. So she grabs Bellina and she's like, let's go. We've got to go find my friends because I think something's wrong. And I mean, this isn't an important detail to the story, but one of my favorite things of all time ever that I wish was real was they come across something called a lunch pail tree. And it's a tree that just has all these buckets, and the buckets are lunch pails and there's lunch inside them. And I always wanted one of those to be real when I was a kid. But anyway, they get to what like should be Munchkin Land because it's where her old house like fell, and her old house is there, like it's there where it fell on the witch in the first movie, but there's no one around. Everything's abandoned. It kind of looks like the ruins of Chernobyl. It's just like her old dilapidated house, no munchkins, nothing. It's like this overgrown kind of nothing. And she's like, where's the yellow brick road? Where is everyone? She kind of looks over to her side and sees some yellow bricks and realizes that the yellow brick road has kind of just been destroyed. Yeah. It's just like piles of rocks and bricks. And she like freaks out and she's like, oh my God, something really bad has happened. And so she starts running down the yellow brick road until she gets to the Emerald City, which unlike the first movie takes about 30 seconds.
Is that the entire movie is getting there?
Yeah.
And she just runs there.
She just runs there. So like in 30 seconds, she gets to the Emerald City and she sees that it's in ruins. Like it's completely ruined. And there's statues everywhere of people who look like they've kind of been frozen mid-activity, like kind of how people were preserved in Pompeii, in the volcano of Pompeii. Like, and it's because Dorothy realizes that all these people have just suddenly been turned into stone, like mid-walking or mid-whatever.
Oh, that's scary.
The Emerald City is literally like a ruined city. Like it looks like a kind of like Chernobyl or a war zone. I heard someone else describe it as like an abandoned theme park. Like that's the vibe of it. And there's just all these statues everywhere of like people who have just been turned to stone. And so she finds the statues of the Cowardly Lion and the Tin Man, who look completely different, by the way, because they are faithful to the books and not to the original movie. So I think that would have like thrown people way off. Like the lion's an actual lion. Like it's very strange. And the books were, because they were done in 1900, the illustrations were very that kind of almost grotesque circus face, cartoony look. You know what like the Luna Park face and that kind of scary character illustration. Like that's what the original books are illustrated like. So the Oz characters, if they're faithful to the books, are kind of
scary looking.
Kind of scary looking. Then, okay, and this is another iconic scary scene that everybody remembers. She's walking around with Bellina. She doesn't know what to do. And all of a sudden she sees spray paint on the walls and it says, "Beware the wheelers." And she's like, "What's a wheeler?" And all of a sudden she hears squeaky, like sounds, and her and Belina start getting chased by men who have arms and legs like the length of Slender Man, like these long, skinny arms and legs, but they get around on all fours because they have wheels instead of hands and feet. And they are called the Wheelers, and they're scary as F.
I remember being terrified of the
This is
Wheelers.
nightmare fuel for a lot of people.
Terrified.
Yeah.
And then we watched a few weeks ago. I was like, why was I scared of this?
But they are
But
scary.
at the time, as a kid, they were terrifying.
I think as a kid they were scary, and I don't know if it's because it was the 80s. I mean, because it's faithful to the books, but they did have a very like 80s punk aesthetic,
Yeah.
kind of steampunky, and they're kind of all young, like guys who are like 20, 21, and they are the kind of guys who, would be scary if you like saw them on the street at night. They almost remind me of the guys from the movie Trainspotting.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're like punky, weird guys. And it's like, it was scary for a certain reason as a kid, but when you watch it as an adult, I find it scary because I'm like, you get the vibe they'll assault her or something. That like they're that kind of creepy guys, these
Yeah.
Wheelers.
But visually, they look like they could be in like the Sydney Olympics opening ceremony.
Yes, because they're on all fours
Yeah.
and they have these wheels and like it's, very...
But they want to murder her. So like
They wanna murder her, I
there's a
think.
scary
Yeah,
vibe
yeah.
to it. Yeah.
So they're chasing her and Belina around and they corner her and she's up against like this stone wall and she turns around. She's like, oh my God, what am I going to do? These Wheelers are going to come and like tear me limb from limb basically. And there's a keyhole in the wall and she's like, oh, the key that I found in the barn. And she pulls the key out of her pocket and it opens the wall door and she goes in and it's like, oh my God. Yep. See, she knew it. It was an Oz key. And so then inside this kind of like storage room, it looks like, behind this cement hidden door, she finds a little robot man and he's called TikTok. And he tells her that the Scarecrow, who had been made King of Oz, like at the end of all the Wizard of Oz stuff.
Was he made the king?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Scarecrow
Why
made
don't I
the
remember
King
that?
of Oz in the
Yeah,
Wizard of Oz.
interesting.
So he had put TikTok in that locked room and told him, wait here for Dorothy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Scarecrow
He
knew
knew.
something was going on. TikTok says that there is a queen called Mombi and she has taken over the Emerald City and the castle in the Emerald City. And so he's like, we should go there and she'll probably tell us where the Scarecrow is and what's going on. And the Scarecrow told me that it is my one purpose in this life to protect you. So TikTok's like her protector.
He's the deal, Dorothy. He's the exposition for the movie.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah.
And he walks like he's like the like not potato man, like the Humpty Dumpty. He's
Yeah.
like Humpty Dumpty,
Yeah. He's a
but
big-
but a robot.
Bronze metal
Sphere.
yeah.
Yeah. He's really cute,
a mustache.
actually, with a mustache.
Yeah.
So they go to the castle, which is all sort of dilapidated on the outside, but still sort of beautiful on the inside, but kind of empty. Like one woman is living in this huge castle by herself, so she only uses like a couple of rooms or whatever. Queen Mombi is scary as F.
She's the scariest one. In this whole film.
To me, she is the scariest one in the whole movie. So she is a lady who has this thing called the magic powder of life. And in order to stay beautiful, she has essentially decapitated a whole bunch of young, beautiful women, and she's used the powder of life to keep their heads alive. So every day she can remove her own head and then like change heads depending on what her mood is. Kind of like having a shoe collection. Queen Mombi has a head collection, and all the heads are kept in their own glass case in like this kind of wardrobe room.
Scary as.
It is really scary. And the heads, when they're in the glass case, they all just sit like they're like awake and can talk and stuff. And they're all just sitting there waiting, like hoping maybe it'll be my turn today to get to be on the body. Like it's very disconcerting.
It's horrifying. It's horrifying.
It's really scary. So Queen Mombi tells Dorothy that not long after she left Oz 6 months ago, this dude called the Gnome King, well, he's not really a dude, he's a gnome. And he's the Gnome King because he is the king of all the gnome creatures. And gnome creatures basically are these weird, scary rock monsters that live underground and kind of mine all the precious gems and diamonds and resources underground. And the Gnome King had raided Oz because he was angry that so many emeralds had been used to make the Emerald City. And he was like, they're my emeralds because I'm underground with all the gems and stuff, and I want my emeralds back. So he captured the Scarecrow King.
The monarch came and colonized underground and stole their resources. I think it's fair enough.
Well, I mean, that was there when the Scarecrow King got there, but anyway, so
he could have apologized.
So apparently he wanted all his emeralds back. And Dorothy's like, amazing. I guess I have to talk to the Gnome King then. Where is he? And Queen Mombi's like, he's at Gnome Mountain. But actually, your head's going to be really pretty in a few years, so I'm going to lock you in my tower until you mature a bit, and then I'm going to cut your head off and add it to my collection.
Yeah.
And Dorothy's like, shit. And so Mombi locks her in this tower, and in the tower, Dorothy meets Jack Pumpkinhead, who is essentially a series of sticks that have been tied together with rope to form like a weird Blair Witch-style body, and then a big Halloween pumpkin is his head. And he kind of does look like Jack the Pumpkin guy from Nightmare Before Christmas.
Yeah.
He says that he can't really remember how he got there. He's just been in the tower for as long as he can remember. He sort of remembers having a girl once that he was like his mother, he thought, but he knows that he was brought to life by Mombi's powder of life, by this girl that he thinks might have been his mother. So Dorothy and Jack Pumpkinhead become fast friends, and they decide they will build, to escape, a flying machine out of things in the room, because it's like a junk room or like an attic. And then they're going to get the powder of life and pour it on their flying machine, and it will come to life and they will fly away to the Gnome Mountain. And so they find this old antique couch and some big sort of fan feather things for wings, and there's this Gump head on the wall, and a Gump is like a moose, I guess. And so they tie that to the front. And then, to me, this is the scariest scene in the entire freaking movie.
I think this is the best scene in the whole movie.
This is the scariest.
I think this is the most child-friendly, magical.
Are you joking?
Yeah.
You're skipping right to the part where they fly away.
Yeah. Is there a part before that?
Yes.
Which is the part before that?
Well,
when she comes after them. That is terrifying.
They build this thing, right? They build this sort of they cobble together this flying machine thing, but it's lifeless because they need to put the powder of life on it to make it come to life so it will fly.
That's right.
The powder of life, Dorothy has to go get it. And this is scary as F. So Queen Mombi, her body sleeps headless in bed. So all the heads, including her original head, are put in their cases at nighttime. She goes to bed headless. And while she is sleeping headless in bed, all the heads are sleeping too, just kind of like it's very disembodied heads, very weird. So the body of Queen Mombi asleep in bed has the key to all the head cases tied around her wrist. And the powder of life is in the case with the original Mombi head. So the original witch Mombi, who cut off the heads of all the others, has the powder of life in her case, right next to her head. So Dorothy has to go and get this key off the wrist of a headless sleeping lady, and then she has to take the key into the room with all the glass cases filled with heads. And of course, the original Mombi head is not beautiful like the other ladies. She's a scary, ugly-looking witch. And in a nod, I think, to the first movie, she is the same actress that plays the scary psychiatric nurse.
Yeah.
So Dorothy is shaking and reaching in to the case to grab the powder of life, trying not to wake up the scary Mombi head, but then she accidentally knocks the powder of life bottle. And so Queen Mombi, her eyes suddenly wake up, and she looks at her, and this is the scary part. She starts going to wake up her headless body and all the other heads. She starts going, Dorothy Gale, Dorothy Gale, like this. And it's you're going to shit your pants when you're 5 years old. Dorothy grabs the powder of life bottle and just guns it up to the attic. And so the headless body comes out, grabs the scary head because she's I've got some murdering to do. I need my scary head. Puts her scary head on. She goes running up after them, and they're pouring the powder of life on the thing. The Gump comes to life. He's like, oh my God, hey, I'm a goofy Gump and I'm alive. And they're shut up and fly. And so they all get in the thing and they fly away just as Queen Mombi is there.
Yeah. That's amazing. It's an amazing scene.
It's
incredible.
I think it's up there amongst the scariest 5 minutes of cinema.
It's horrifying.
Truly. It's so scary.
And the payoff is, though, next scene, then you get the scene that I love where they just go
They're
flying
flying.
in the air on this magical kind of bed machine they've made.
Yeah, so they have to fly over to No Mountain, and to get to No Mountain, you have to fly over the Deadly Desert. So even though to you it's a whimsical scene, if you touch the sand in the Deadly Desert, you crumble to dust.
Yeah.
So it's
Not
dangerous.
great. Not great.
It's not great. It's not great. They're flying over like the Deadly Desert, getting closer and closer to No Mountain, and it is quite lovely. Like Jack Pumpkinhead asks Dorothy if he can call her mom because like he really likes her and he misses his mom, and like TikTok's there and Dorothy kind of lies down and they're all saying to her like, go to sleep, Dorothy, like you need some rest, and she's like, yeah, I do. And then she wakes up as their thing is falling apart, like they haven't tied the ropes together very well and it's starting to fall apart, and it like kind of all disintegrates as they land on No Mountain, luckily. Yeah. So they like crash land onto No Mountain. She's there with her little crew, and the Gnome King is essentially just this giant dude like made of stone. Like just think of all the stone in the world and underground, he can just like, his face can just morph there at any time, his face and body, and that of his little minions. He's like part of the rocks. He's like a scary rock monster man. And he is played by the guy who played the psychiatrist. So it's like, clever. And Dorothy is like, he's like, what are you guys doing here? And she's like, I'm here to ask you to give back the emeralds you have taken from the Emerald City and to restore everything you ruined in Oz and to give me my friend the Scarecrow. And he's like, oh, hello, you're Dorothy Gale. I know you. And then all of a sudden the mountain kind of opens up and Dorothy and her crew fall through it. And it's kind of like they're falling through the earth, like down deeper and deeper to the center of the earth. And as Dorothy is falling, she can see like all around her are like gems and precious stones, kind of like she's in a cave under the earth where you would be mining diamonds and stuff. And as she's falling, he goes, I'll read this to you. He talks really weird. He goes, all the precious stones in the world are made here, all made for me by my gnomes. So imagine how I feel when someone else digs down here and steals my treasures.
Yeah, fair enough.
All the emeralds in the Emerald City belong to me. So I was just taking back what was mine to begin with. And Dorothy goes, but you have so much. Like, why do you need it all? Is this a little bit of a message about hoarding wealth and the 1%? And he goes, that is not the point. They're mine. And it's like, okay, hello. I see what comment you're trying to make here, Walter Murch. So Dorothy and her crew kind of land down in the middle of the mountain, and the Gnome King is acting quite friendly and quite accommodating, which, the psychiatrist was too, though, so that's kind of ominous. And the Gnome King tells Dorothy that he has turned the Scarecrow into a precious ornament because he likes collecting precious, fancy things, and so he takes like people or whoever and he turns them all into precious ornaments, and he has this big room that kind of looks like the showroom at Antiques Roadshow, and it's just filled with precious ornaments.
So he either turns people into precious ornaments or he turns them to stone.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So he says, I will give you guys a chance to get the Scarecrow back. So I'll send you into the ornament room one by one, and you have to like guess which ornament the Scarecrow is, and you have 3 chances to guess. You have to put your hands on an ornament and say Oz, and if you get it right, then the Scarecrow will be there. And they're like, hooray, great, thank you so much, you're so accommodating.
It feels like a kids TV game show.
Yeah,
it feels like amazing or something. It's like, all right, the rules are you have to go into a room.
I know, and it's like, is he bored or something? Like, why doesn't he just turn them into ornaments straight away? Like, why is he playing a game with them? And so he sends the Gump in first. He goes, first, the sofa. And so the Gump kind of goes walking in. And while the sofa's in there, it's so bizarre, he serves them refreshments. He gives them key lime pie and hot melted silver on little silver tray. And all of a sudden this sort of lightning thunder noise happens, and Dorothy's like, what's that? And the Gnome King goes, well, the Gump guessed incorrectly 3 times, so then he turns into an ornament. And Dorothy's like, you didn't tell us that, you tricked us. And he's like, are you going to get mad at me? And then he gets really angry and there's like fire and it looks scary, and they're like, uh-oh, he's he's serious. Like, he's given us pie, but he's a scary man. And so he's basically like, you have no choice. You all have to go in and do your 3 guesses. And if you get it wrong, too bad, too sad. You get turned into one of my precious ornaments. And also, like, to get into the ornament room, it's really effing scary. The rock just turns into like thousands of hands on hands on hands digging in on themselves. And then you like go in through this tunnel and end up in Antiques Roadshow. It's the weirdest thing. So they all kind of go in there and they all fail. And TikTok and Dorothy are the 2 last ones left. And TikTok goes in last, like before Dorothy. And while TikTok's in there, the Gnome King and Dorothy kind of have a chat. And this is the point where he reveals to Dorothy that he has the ruby slippers. And it's like quite weird and funny because he's this giant, scary stone man, but he lifts up his little cloak and he's wearing these little like sparkly heels. And he's like, aren't they beautiful? And she's like, they're mine. And he's like, they're not yours. They fell off your feet when you were, flying, going back to Kansas, and you lost them and I found them, and like finders keepers losers suck, essentially. And he says to her, but look, I have the slippers, so why don't I just send you home? Like, F your friends. I can just click my heels together, my very fancy heels together 3 times, and I can send you home. And he says, when you get back, you will never think of Oz again. And I'm like, ooh, that's quite
a good deal.
But it's quite connected to like the electroshock therapy was meant to like.
But the whole film is based on.
Yeah. And so she of course says no because she's brave and awesome. And then the Gnome King is like, your robot TikTok friend is in there and he's just standing like motionless in the middle of the room. And Dorothy's like, oh, I probably need to wind him up because he needs to be wound up. So the Gnome King's like, yeah, whatever, details. Go in and wind him up and then you can do your turn as well. So Dorothy goes into the ornament room and TikTok's like, I don't actually need winding up. I'm just really smart. And this was a trick to get you in here. And this is where, even though TikTok is like this weird robot man, he actually like has feelings and a heart. And he says to Dorothy, I've only got 1 guess left. I'm not going to get, like, the chances of me getting it are like, I'm not going to get it. So I pretended I couldn't move. So you would come in here. You can watch me do my last guess. You see what I turn into, and that maybe will give you a clue about, like,
what the scarecrow
what
is.
to do.
Yeah.
And so then it's like, oh my God, he's about to like die. And so then they have this really precious moment where she's like, TikTok, I love you. And he's like, yes, I think I am having feelings that might be described as love. And then he has like a little green tear comes from his eye. And so then he touches a thing and he's like, Oz. And then they cut away from Dorothy and him and they cut to Mombi, who has like gone on her wheelers, like she uses them as like horses and she's on a carriage except they're the wheelers and she whips them and it's really scary. And she's got to know Mountain because she's like, I've got to warn him that Dorothy's coming. And so she's like, hello, Gnome King. And it's like this really weird moment, like they have a weird dynamic where she stands there in front of him and he goes, kneel. And so she gets on her knees and then he goes, lower. And so she kind of gets a bit lower, like bends over, and then he goes, lower. So then she literally lays flat on the floor, like with her face on the ground. And then he goes, lower. And she like looks confused because she's like, I'm literally face first in the dirt. And then he's like, ha, 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 ha. Like, just messing with you kind of thing. Like it's a really weird scene. And this is the funny part where, of course, the woman like is smart because she's like, look, Dorothy Gale is coming here. And it's funny that this is the thing she points out. She goes, she stole my key and my powder of life and also my antique sofa. She's angry about the sofa. And then he's like, look, bitch, I know she's already here. She got here ages ago. And he's like, I'm playing this game with them where they're going to go into this room and touch things and try and get the scarecrow. And that's when Momba's like, why didn't you just transform them? Why didn't you just
what's with the game?
Kill them all straight away? And he just looks at her and goes, it's more fun this way. It's like, all right, mate. Like, dudes are idiots. And then Mombi's like, but what if she guesses right and then she finds out about Ozma? And then
Oh, what's Ozma?
Ozma, yeah, and we don't know.
I loved it throughout this film. They just keep throwing in new things. Like,
I know.
Like, you can't make sense of it.
And this makes the Gnome King get really mad. He goes, Ozma, you haven't let her escape as well. Like, he starts getting all angry. And Mombi's like, no, I haven't. And he's like, well, good. Soon there will be no one left who remembers Oz. And I will be completely human. And so then it's like, oh.
Hold on.
So I guess, they haven't given any detail about this. But I guess they're kind of saying, like, the more people he turns into ornaments, the more human he gets.
Yeah.
And that is when you notice, when we first met the Gnome King 10 minutes ago, he was almost all rock.
Yeah.
And he does slowly turn more and more into like a dude in a silver suit.
Yeah.
Or like a rock colored suit. So you're like, okay, whatever. I feel
It's like
maybe
a kid telling a story where they just keep on throwing little details in there.
Yeah, there was more to that we didn't get, but whatever. And so they're like having that, conversation. And then we cut back to the ornament room and TikTok has turned into a green ornament. And so Dorothy realizes it's green ornaments. So she touches the green ornament and she says Oz and the Scarecrow pops up and she's like, yay, it's green ornaments. And then Mombi and the Gnome King hear her get it right and hear the Scarecrow go, Dorothy, and she's like, Scarecrow. And then even though Mombi was just literally like, why are you even risking this? Just transform them all straight away. And like they hear Dorothy get it right and Mombi kind of gives in this look like,
told you so.
What did I tell you? And he suddenly looks at Mombi and he goes, you let her escape. And Mombi's like, what? Anyway, so then he goes, Pachoo, and puts Mombi in a cage. So Mombi's stuck there in a cage. And then Dorothy and the Scarecrow, they're like running around the Antiques Roadshow room, like turning all the green things back into their friends and they're getting everything done. And then the Gnome King comes in and he's really angry and he's like, I'm sick of this. This was just a dumb game. I'm just going to eat you all now. And so he turns into this big, huge rock monster.
Oh, now he eats people as well.
Yeah.
Okay, why not? Why not?
So he turns into this big, huge rock monster and he picks up Jack Pumpkinhead by the legs. Now, what he hadn't realized and what we've forgotten is Bellina the chicken. Bellina the chicken is hiding inside Jack Pumpkinhead's pumpkin head.
I see.
And so the Gnome King is dangling Jack above his mouth and he's like about to eat him and everyone's like, no. And then all of a sudden, Bellina, just in her fear, hasn't been able to lay an egg in years and she lays an egg and the egg drops into the Gnome King's mouth and it turns out that eggs are the one single thing on this earth that are fatal to gnomes.
Wow.
So an egg falls into his mouth and down his throat. And all of a sudden he looks horrified and he goes, an egg? An egg? And then all the little gnome minions start going, poison, poison, poison. And they all start like disintegrating away. And they're like looking at him going like, what the hell? And he looks at Dorothy and he goes, don't you know? Eggs are poison to gnomes. And then they're all going, poison. So anyway, then he like starts disintegrating and he sort of turns into a rock skeleton and like falls apart and everything falls apart around them. And Dorothy runs in and grabs the ruby slippers just as everything's kind of collapsing and she puts them on and she clicks her heels together 3 times and she holds all her friends and she's like, I wish everything was fixed and back to normal in Oz. And then it is.
Yay!
And so like you flash over to the Emerald City and suddenly all the statues like turn into people and like start moving again. And Dorothy and her crew just wake up in a field and Mombi's with them in the cage. So Mombi has somehow like transferred over with them with the slippers.
What happens to all like the headless people?
We'll get to that.
Oh, okay.
So they're in a field and they can see the Emerald City in the distance and all of a sudden the Emerald City like lights up beautiful green and they're like, it's restored. And then we just cut to a big ass party.
Yeah.
And there's like a big parade and they don't really explain how much time has passed, but they've all had makeovers. Like Bellina's all like her feathers are fluffy and Dorothy looks all schmick and TikTok's been like polished so he's shiny and so they've been there for a bit, I guess. And so there's this big like parade and this is the part that is aesthetically most like Wicked. It's like very much their Emerald City parade scene is very much like the aesthetic of Wicked.
Yeah.
And so they're like having this parade and everyone's so excited. And then they go up to like the throne where the Scarecrow King is sitting. And all of the people in Oz are like, Dorothy, stay, be our queen, be our queen. It's like, I don't know what that says about what's going to happen, like what needs to happen between the Scarecrow and Dorothy. But they're like, please, be our queen, be our queen. And she's like, no, I love you all so much. But, like, I have to go home. Like, I belong in Kansas and I wish I could be two places at once. And this is where Fairuza Balk is, like, an amazing little actor. She's 9 years old and it's, like, such a beautiful scene. And then all of a sudden, she's in the middle of being like, no, I have to go home. And Bellina's like, there's something in the mirror behind you. And Dorothy turns around and in the mirror behind her is the little girl from the insane asylum who we thought had drowned, except she's dressed like a glorious princess and she's stuck inside the mirror. And she goes, and Dorothy's like, oh my God, I thought you died. And then she looks at her and she goes, help me step through the glass, Dorothy. And so then Dorothy puts her hands up on the mirror and she put her hands up and then she pulls her through. And so here's where she explains. She's like, I am Princess Ozma. This is Ozma. Her father was King of Oz before the wizard came and did something dodgy and got rid of him.
Yeah.
And so then Mombi captured Ozma and kept her as a slave. And so Ozma sort of like lived within Mombi's castle for a while. And then the Gnome King turned up and wanted to like take over everything. And so the Gnome King was like, I will like give you like decapitate all these ladies for you if you keep Mombi a secret forever because I don't want anybody to know that there's like Oz royalty around. And so Mombi's like, great, yeah, you give me the pretty heads. And she does a spell that traps Mombi like in the mirrors, just kind of like all mirrors. Like she's like in like Matthew McConaughey in Interstellar.
Yes,
like she's
yes,
in
yes.
like an adjacent place.
Yes.
And so she's just been trapped in the mirrors this whole time.
But also in the mental asylum.
You know.
It doesn't pick holes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And this is where Jack Pumpkinhead goes, Mom? And he realizes that Ozma was like the little slave girl up in the tower who she was
Yes.
lonely. And so she had made him to be her. And then he's like, that's my mom. All the women who had been the headless women who now have their heads,
Yep.
they're like, she's telling the truth. Her father was the King of Oz. We can verify. And so everyone's like, okay, Queen Ozma. And she's like 10,
Yeah.
but, you know, whatever. Dorothy gives her the ruby slippers and she's like, I'm going to send you back to Kansas. And Dorothy's like, okay, Bellina, let's go. And Bellina's like, F that. I'm
Yeah.
staying here living a life of royalty.
I'd be like with Bellina. It's
Yeah.
like, we don't even have a house back in Kansas.
Yeah, and so Bellina-
They send us to a mental institution.
Yeah, and she's like, I'm fancy here.
Yeah.
They've got me on this little pillow.
They're
Like,
literally fluffing my feathers.
yes. And so Bellina's like, I'm staying. And so Ozma says, I'll check in on you from time to time, Dorothy. And Dorothy's like, thank you so much. And she clicks her heels, like Ozma has the slippers on, clicks her heels. And then Dorothy wakes up in the woods and it's like cold and wet. And all of a sudden Toto comes running over to her and she's like, Toto. And then she can hear people calling out and it's a search party because it's been like a day since the storm happened and she's been missing. And so Henry, her Uncle Henry, who I guess his leg is fixed, comes running over to her with a blanket and he's crying and he's like, I found her, we found her, she's here, she's here. So they've been like searching for, I don't know, 48 hours, 24 hours or something. And so Aunt Em tells her that when the storm hit the clinic, the lightning zapped something and the clinic set on fire and it burned down and everybody survived except Dr. Worley, who like stayed trying to save all his like machines. And because all these people got out, they were all like the people down in the basement and like the mistreated patients and stuff. So then they realized what had been happening there. And the nurse is caged up, like going to prison, just like Queen Mombi in her cage. And so then they go home and it's like a new day. And Dorothy's up in her room and she looks like way healthier and happier than she did at the start of the movie. Like something's different, you know? And she looks in the mirror and she sees Ozma standing there with Bellina. Aww. And Bellina looks so fancy and Ozma's like, hi. And I have to point out here that the dress that Ozma wears, the princess dress that Ozma wears in this movie, is truly the most beautiful dress I have ever seen in my life. Like, I thought so when I was 5 years old, and I still think so today. It is my dream to one day. Like, I would wear that dress
Yeah.
to my wedding.
Well, next Halloween we should go as Ozma and Belina.
Yeah, you can be Belina.
I'll be Belina.
I think this would be a very expensive dress to make, but like it's just tulle on tulle on tulle on sequins.
Beautiful.
It's gorgeous. It's like a fairy princess dress. So yeah, Dorothy sees Ozma in the mirror in her bedroom. She's holding Belina, who looks really fancy. And Dorothy is like, oh my God, I can finally prove to everyone that I'm not a nutcase. So she calls out, she's like, Aunt Em. And Ozma goes, no, shh. And so Ozma tells her, don't tell anyone, like keep this secret. I think Ozma's like, because they think you're crazy.
Yeah, girl, come on.
And so then Aunt Em comes up to the room and she's like, what? And Dorothy looks in the mirror and there's nothing there. But then Dorothy's like, but I know they were like watching over me kind of thing. And then Aunt Em's like, it's a beautiful day. Go outside and play. And Dorothy's like, okay. And so she runs outside and there's just kind of this retreating kind of drone shot of Dorothy just running on the farm, and the house is like built and everything looks green and sunny and happy, and Henry looks good. And it's like, yay, everything's happy now.
Everything's
And that's
great.
the end.
There's a lot in that movie, isn't there?
Yeah,
There's a lot in that movie.
it's a lot.
It's a lot.
That's Return to Oz.
It's a lot. I mean, like, it's magical all the time, but when you explain it, you're like, actually, maybe there was too much in this movie.
I mean, also one of the things that they did that connected it to the first movie, which Walter Murch didn't do a lot because he wanted to be very particular about it being faithful to the books and not the movie. But one of the things he carried over was the same actors being used in Oz versus Kansas.
Yeah.
And I think like what that did for me when I watched The Wizard of Oz as a kid and when I watched Return to Oz is that it gives you this weird thing of like, you never truly know if Dorothy is crazy or not because she has just taken all this stuff from the real world and it's all kind of also in the Oz world. And it's like, is she nuts?
Well, I remember as a kid, I watched The Wizard of Oz like religiously. Like,
Did you think she was nuts?
Pretty much every day. I grew up watching The Wizard of Oz every day.
That's
I remember
so
I remember the
cute.
first time someone explained to me saying, no, she heard it was all a dream. I was like kind of crushed and devastated by that.
Yeah.
And they're like picking things through, being like, because all the characters are the same. Like there are
There's
bits and
matching
pieces.
themes, there's matching props, there's little bits, and it's
And
the
I was
same in
like,
Return to
oh
Oz.
yeah, maybe she was just dreaming, or maybe she was just crazy. I mean, even like the Wheelers,
Yeah. And the guys pushing the
with
gurneys.
TikTok is
Yeah.
like a mechanical
the machine, the electroshock
like everything
machine.
is, and you're like, oh well. But I think that is part of the magic when you watch films as children and adults is that you can
Yeah.
watch it as a child and be like, this is pure just a fantasy thing. She does go to this other
Yeah.
land. But as an adult, you can watch it and kind of be like, well, maybe she is going through some shit. Like lots going on and maybe this is a trauma
Yeah.
response. But either way,
What
it's
does it?
interesting.
Yeah, what does it matter? So, okay, that was the plot of Return to Oz.
Yeah.
And I will now give you like just the gist of sort of how it happened, which is not as long as the plot, but you know, because that was a journey. So essentially, this is how it went down. It's 1980, and Walter Murch, who was a very accomplished film editor and sound designer. He actually invented the term sound design because no one else was really doing it the way he did it. He had gone to film school with George Lucas and he'd worked with the best of the best. He'd won an Oscar for the sound design he did on Apocalypse Now, which is, you know, directed by Francis Ford Coppola. He'd worked on American Graffiti. He was a big deal. And so production companies sort of said to him, would you ever want to direct? And so he took this meeting with Disney and they were like, is there something you're interested in doing? And he said, actually, you know, I've always wanted to make an Oz movie that is like the books.
Yeah.
Because when he was a kid, they were a very special thing to him. He read them with his mum. He loved there ends up being quite a wide Oz universe of books, but the first three in particular that L. Frank Baum wrote were like the three main Oz books. And he loved them. And when he eventually watched The Wizard of Oz, he remembers feeling like disappointed because he was like, this is nothing like the books.
Yeah.
Like it was very much like MGM just kind of did their own thing with
Yeah.
The Wizard of Oz. And he was like, I would love to make a Wizard of Oz that is, or like an Oz movie that is faithful to the books. And he was like, you know, it would kind of have to be a sequel, I guess. Like The Wizard of Oz is based on the first book and that you can't remake The Wizard of Oz. It's like considered the best movie of all time. So I guess it would kind of be a sequel, but not really. It would be its own thing, like just a new interpretation of these books. And he's talking to the boss of Disney who kind of really likes it. He likes the idea. He's like, yeah, that's actually a really cool idea. And also Disney had the rights to the Oz books that they'd paid for. And it was 5 years away from the Oz books becoming public domain, because after 75 years, works become public domain and anyone can use them. And so Disney had paid quite a lot of money for the rights to the Oz books, and they had 5 years left where they were the only ones who could do something with them. So there was like a bit of a clock on it too. And so the boss is like, yeah, man, like we have the rights to those, so go for it. Go. That movie sounds like cool. And it was, you know, around this time that other movies like Labyrinth were being developed and The Dark Crystal and that kind of thing. So it wasn't like out of the realm of what was happening in kids' stuff.
Kids stuff that felt dark.
Yeah. So like I said, those Oz books had been written in the early 1900s and they were kind of scary, fairy tale-ish a lot more than the MGM movie. And Walter Murch is like, that's how I want to do it and I want to base it in that time. So he gets to work and he gets a co-writer to write the script. So he writes the script with another dude. And, you know, he is a details guy. So that's why he really thinks a lot about recession farm life and electricity and all those. He really wants to get all of that stuff really right. Even the electroshock machine that is in the movie, he had found that in an antique store in London and it's a real electroshock machine. And he's this much of a details guy that in all the interviews I've watched with him, whenever people say, oh, you know, because it was about electroshock therapy, he's like, no, in 1900 it was still called electrotherapy. Like he's that detail oriented. So you can start to see why, you know, he's given like a pretty big budget, things get happening. And then the boss at Disney that he'd made this deal with gets like moved on and a new boss comes in and the new guy is not into the idea.
Yeah.
And he's just like, this doesn't make sense to me. Is it a kid's movie? Is it an adult movie? Like also we're getting close to the, like we were closer to the time where the public domain was about to hit anyway. So it was like, there's no really point to this. He kind of doesn't want to make it, but they've already sunk enough money in it that he's like, I guess we just make it. But he cuts the budget in like a major way.
Yeah.
And so this is where Walter says the budget got cut at a really unexpected time. Like they were already so far into it. He had to cut the script by like 15 pages. So where there are bits and pieces that seem like they don't make sense, like suddenly you're like, oh, like turning people to ornaments makes him more human, or like there was context.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah.
But it had to get cut because the budget just suddenly got cut.
Yeah. The egg thing seems like a big thing. It's like,
I mean, I left it out because it's just the gist. Throughout the movie, the Gnome King is asking his little minions, does she have a chicken with her? Like, is there a chicken? So you know he's scared of chickens, but they never say anything about it. But anyway. So, you know, they get to work. Probably the most important thing is casting Dorothy, and to him, because he's a details guy and he wants to be faithful to the books, he wants Dorothy to be the right age. So that's why he insists, like, you know, Judy Garland was 16 playing essentially a 10-year-old, but I want like a 10-year-old. They do a major casting. They see like over 2,000 girls and they end up finding Fairuza Balk, who's 9, and she was the youngest of everyone who auditioned. And when you watch, you can tell why she's incredible. Like there's this this quote from The Guardian when they wrote about this movie a couple of years ago, like sort of being a long lost gem. And this journalist says, even the lead, Fairuza, is so intense. Judy Garland had been 16 when she first stepped into Oz. Fairuza Balk was 9. Garland had made 6 features, Balk had made none. And while Garland had a host of stage and screen veterans for company, Balk was acting mostly opposite 2 puppets, a chicken, and a sofa. Yet the tiny, pale, turquoise-eyed Balk proceeded to give one of the greatest child performances in cinema. And I think it is.
Yeah, 100%.
She's incredible in this movie. So they start shooting in 1984. And the shoot goes from February to October, so it's a long shoot. It was meant to be a worldwide shoot, like they wanted to be on location for all the different places. But because the budget got cut, they just have to do it all on a soundstage in London. So that kind of throws a spanner in things. They have to start solving problems in different ways. They hire Brian Henson, who is Jim Henson's son, and works very closely with him to do all the puppetry.
Yeah.
So he does all the puppetry of all the characters. He's also the voice of Jack Pumpkinhead. Because there is no CGI in this movie. Like this is one of those movies where everything is like mechanical and real. Like everything
It's
has
beautiful.
to be built. Like, okay,
80s and 90s films, like kids films
best
like that,
like
they're
this.
so good for that. Like
we've
it's-
talked about this like when we watched Hook, and
yeah,
we were
Hook
like,
is a
this
big
is
one, yeah.
oh God, it's good. Like, for example, TikTok, the robot, there's a dude inside there.
Wow.
So they had to hire a gymnast, champion trampolinist, and it was a guy called hold on, what was he called? No, I don't know. And they hired this guy, and just listen to this quote. So he could only be in there 2.5 minutes. He had to be bent over backwards, completely in half, right? So he had to be strapped into the shell of the costume with his head between his legs, bent over, and he was facing backwards. A small monitor allowed him to see where he was going. There was also limited air, so once he was in there, he could only be in there 2 minutes and 45 seconds, so they had to film all of that. And this guy is literally walking around like that inside TikTok. Like they had to hire a gymnast to do it.
Wow, that's incredible.
So they really were like doing everything is the real. There's no CGI. It's all just incredibly creative people like pulling stuff together. But it's a complicated shoot because of, you know, all the puppetry, and it's also hard because Fairuza's 9. She can only work 3 hours a day. So they have to constantly be like accommodating that schedule with her because she's a kid. And very quickly, like a few weeks into shooting, they're already really behind schedule. And Walter Murch like admits in interviews now that, you know, he was inexperienced. He'd not been a director before, so he was like a bit overwhelmed, and the budget cuts had changed a lot of the plans they had. So he was kind of freaking out a little. And 3 weeks into shooting, Disney fire him. They're like,
okay.
this is a nightmare. Like
Yeah.
you're already behind schedule. You're going to end up over budget. Like, no way. But then his director posse come to the rescue. So they're shooting in London. He gets fired. He kind of goes home for the weekend, and they don't know what's going to happen. Like, is the film even going to keep going? Are they going to like try and find someone else? But George Lucas hears about it, and he's like, not to my friend. So George Lucas flies into London and talks to the like executives of Disney, and he's like, you're not firing Walter Murch. Like, he knows what he's doing. He's the best. It's, you know, you've cut the budget, blah, blah, blah. And so George Lucas essentially makes a deal with them. He's like, I will vouch for him, hire him back, and let him keep going, and I'll help him. And if there's any problems, like, I will be there to
Get them sorted, yeah.
get them sorted. And so Disney's like, fine. So Walter Murch gets fired on the Friday and is back at work on like, you know, the Monday or the Tuesday.
Yeah.
But then get this, George Lucas actually does help. He comes to the set and he calls his old mate Steven Spielberg and his other old mate Francis Ford Coppola. So they come to the set too. And so for the next couple of weeks, just to like help Walter Murch like
You got
get
a
back on
dream
track.
team.
Literally on this
Wow.
set. So the guy, Brian Henson, who's interviewed in this documentary called Remembering Return to Oz, he says it was the craziest thing. Like, you'd walk onto set and like Steven Spielberg would be working on a scene over there, and Coppola would be helping out on something over there, and George Lucas is in the corner setting up a shot. And
Wow.
like, he's like, they were just there helping
That's incredible.
do this. Yeah. And so Walter Murch actually says the help was really invaluable. Like, he learned a lot from them while they were there. George Lucas like gave him some really invaluable lessons about shooting and how to get things done quickly. And he learned so much from them, and I think it probably boosted his confidence too, that the film actually finished shooting ahead of schedule and below budget.
What was the incentive for them to come and help? Was it
They were his
that
friends.
Murch was just like
They were his friends.
a
They were
great
good
guy,
friends.
and they were like, yeah.
He
look-
had worked on all their films,
Yeah.
had helped them all win Oscars. He'd
Yeah.
won an Oscar himself
Yeah.
for his work with Francis Ford Coppola. Like, he'd known George Lucas since film school. They were his friends.
like, our friend's in
and it
trouble,
was his
let's all
first.
jump
It was
in.
his first time directing,
Yeah.
and they were like, "You're not screwing our friend over," and they came and helped him.
yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Nice.
So a lot of people don't know, like, Francis Ford Coppola, George Lucas, Steven Spielberg all kind of helped
That's crazy.
with Return to Oz.
Wow.
They finished, like I said, ahead of schedule, below budget, and they're going to release. But then before release, the boss at Disney changes again. So this is now the third different head of Disney they've had since he first pitched this project to the guy who initially really liked the idea. And this is when Eisner and Katzenberg actually take over Disney. So this is their kind of era. And they want nothing to do with this movie. They don't understand it. They don't get the concept of it. Walter Murch says later, I should have realized when I was editing the movie and you send the bosses like dailies and shots, I wasn't getting any edit notes or anything. And he's like, I should have realized it wasn't because what I was doing was perfect. It was just because they didn't give a shit.
They didn't care. They wanted to bury it.
Yeah, they wanted to bury it. And, this is a movie that needs to be marketed in a really particular way because it's not a straight sequel. Like, it's not really a companion piece to the original. This is a Oz movie that is based on the story of the books. And MGM, who had made The Wizard of Oz, they actually own the copyright to the Wizard of Oz movie as a separate piece of art to the books because it is quite different. And I mean, even for example, in the books, the ruby slippers aren't ruby, they're silver. And they had decided to make them ruby for the MGM movie. And so the concept of ruby slippers is actually a copyrighted idea from that MGM owns.
Yes.
And they did use the ruby slippers in Return to Oz because Disney insisted on it. They were like, I know you're staying faithful to the book, but you have to have ruby slippers.
What do they call them if they don't call them ruby slippers?
Silver slippers.
Silver slippers,
yeah.
Oh, okay.
And they were like, you have to have ruby slippers. And so they had to pay MGM for the copyright to use the ruby slippers, which is something that the Wicked people weren't willing to do, which is why in Wicked they're silver.
Yeah. I read as well that, or saw somewhere, that the reason why they're ruby is because, in the MGM film, it was like they were using Technicolor and they wanted that big wow moment, and they were like, if they're silver, they're not going to pop on the screen.
No, yeah.
So we'll change the color of them. That's
changed
it seems like such a strange reason, but that is why they're their iconic ruby slippers.
And so and not only did they have to pay for the sort of copyright to use the idea of the ruby slippers, but they also got the actual ruby slippers.
Oh wow.
And Fairuza Balk talks about how they were so precious. She said she only got to put them on for the exact seconds they were filming the scene. And she said they are made of actual bits of mirror, thousands and thousands of tiny little bits of red mirror. So it's reflective and sparkly. And she said they were so fragile. There was someone there holding them in a case, and they put them on and then they immediately took them off you. And it was a whole to do. But really, really serious business, the ruby slippers.
Should have been a different size of Julie Garland though. No?
I don't know how they, this is just the gist, man. I mean, but she wore them. So, like I said, this movie needs to be marketed in a particular way because it's not the MGM IP or copyright.
Yeah.
They made their own Oz movie. This is a movie that's based on the books, which is its own thing. But Eisner and Katzenberg were just we don't, whatever, man. Enough money's gone into this. It's not our project. We're new here. What is this movie? Is it for kids? We don't get it. And so they essentially were just we're just going to market this using the whole It's a Wizard of Oz sequel thing. That's the only way we're going to make money of this. We're just going to tell everyone it's a sequel to The Wizard of Oz, and it's a family holiday movie because they were that's, and Walter Murch was kind of that's a really bad idea because that's not what it is. It needs to be marketed like The Dark Crystal or The Neverending Story had come out the year earlier.
So good.
It needed to be marketed like those movies. It needed to be clear to people that it was, you're not going to turn up and
go to a musical.
Yeah. But they were just we don't care. That's how we're doing it. And so that's what everyone thought it was, the public. That's how it was marketed. It premieres in 1985, and Walter Murch said they got a couple of good reviews. It didn't do well the first weekend, but they got a couple of good reviews from early reviewers who went to see early screenings, and he was like, oh my God, phew, they get it. They get what it is. Maybe I've done good, right? But then Siskel and Ebert, who are the famous, Roger Ebert does he's pretty much the most famous movie reviewer in the world.
His first name
Siskel
Siskel.
and Ebert are two
people.
guys.
Okay,
They basically were like
Margaret and David. At the
Margaret
movies.
and David.
Yep.
Yeah. Back in the 80s. And it was like the show that everyone watched to find out about what movies to go to. They eviscerate it
Oh.
on their show. Like eviscerate it. Like literally they say this is meant to be a kid's movie, but the opening scenes are torture scenes and they're terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
Dorothy is strapped down to a gurney in an insane asylum. Like, and I'll put the link to there because you can watch the YouTube clip of the show still, and I'll put the link in the show notes because they don't get it.
Yeah.
Like they literally just sit there going like laughing and being really like patronizing about the fact that like this whole thing was a disaster from start to finish, and very kind of old school grandpa type men going like, why would you ruin such a beautiful, lovely thing? This should be a musical. It should like, and they kept comparing it to scenes from The Wizard of Oz. Like, look how lovely and dancy and fun that is. And then they'd cut to a scene of like wheelers chasing Dorothy, and they're like, what is this? Like, they just didn't get it. And so they essentially said to people, this is like the worst kids movie ever made. It's horrifying. Don't bother seeing it. And Walter Murch says like after that, they were just like
Dead in the water.
dead in the water. And he said, yeah, we were done. That was it. He never directed a movie again.
Wow.
It did really badly critically and box office wise.
Yeah.
It did really well in Japan, apparently, randomly, which, you know, whatever. But then it did go on to like do really well. Cult following wise, the VHS sales of it was huge, like which my parents contributed one sale to. But you know, I think the reason it did so badly and kind of disappeared from the cultural zeitgeist in a mainstream way, like there's a lot of people who don't know this movie exists. It seems to be people who like love it in a cult way, like who like you either know it and really love it or you've never heard of it. Like it's just kind of just disappeared.
Yeah. Or people in our like age group who saw it when they were young,
Yeah.
were scared and horrified for it and had this
Yeah.
like memory of this film that was like
This
terrifying.
random film. But other than that, it's kind of disappeared from like the sort of important mainstream cultural zeitgeisty history, which is a shame because like if it had been approached and marketed and then sort of taken in and viewed the way Walter Murch intended, like it is a weird movie. It is because it was meant to be. Like it was meant
They
to
said
be.
at the time that that's what children's or family films
Yeah.
were. I mean, you mentioned the Neverending Story before.
Yeah.
A lot weirder things I think happen in the Neverending Story, but we
Yeah.
all kind of like love it, treasure it, you know, like, and I think it just has generations or decades of like love for it.
Well,
you know?
even Walter Murch said in an interview, like, I think the flying monkeys are scarier than anything in Return to
They are,
Oz,
yeah.
really. But like, you know, it's a weird, he made a movie intentionally based on the books, but also just what he wanted to do, which was like dark and twisted
Yeah.
and like had heavy themes because he really respected kids. And he, like I said before, he said, like, I don't want to patronize to kids. I think they're capable of watching movies that are made for them that are like have serious themes and scary themes and confronting themes. And there's stuff that people say in this movie that's like too much for kids, but I think it's about sort of, you know, as a kid feeling powerless and then finding a way to feel empowered. He says, I really like this quote here. It's really sweet. He says, sometimes even the most well-meaning of parents, for their own reasons, make choices that put their kids in jeopardy, and you have to make your own friends and find your own way. That's what happens in life. And I just, you know, I've watched a lot of interviews with him and read a lot of interviews with him researching this episode. And yeah, the one thing that has really struck me is how important it was to him to make a movie that was respectful of kids and wasn't speaking down to them and wasn't patronizing them and may have had some confronting themes, but he was like, but kids can handle that.
Yeah.
Like he thinks kids can handle that. And that was the movie he wanted to make. And it is a weird movie and it is a dark movie and it is kind of a scary movie, but it was meant to be and it's awesome.
Yeah.
I think when people think about this being like one of the great flops or one of the like Waterworld style movie embarrassments or whatever, they think that it was intended to be a sequel to The Wizard of Oz that went horribly wrong. But I think what a lot of people don't know is that it was never intended to be that. The movie that you watch is what they wanted to make. It's just that nobody understands that really, I think. Yeah.
It wasn't Theodore Rex that was supposed to be a gritty sci-fi film, but turned out to be a dinosaur.
Yeah, no, this was what he wanted. I mean, this is literally the kids' movie you get if you get the guy who worked on Apocalypse Now and American Graffiti making your kids' movie.
Yeah.
Like, this is what you get.
You're going to get something gritty.
The original boss of Disney that he pitched this idea to and who understood it, he really understood what it was meant to be. But then, you know, just all that corporate stuff happens and it all just...
Things get sanitized.
Yeah, and like, but Walter Murch, he's still alive and he, you know, went on, he'd already had an incredible career. And even though he never directed again, he continued to have an incredible career. He won more Oscars. He won an Oscar for The English Patient later. Like, he's done so much. And he, you know, in interviews I've read and watched, I think he's like in his early 80s now, and he's talked about this movie as recently as last year. Like, he really loves what he did in this movie. He's like, I love that movie. And he thinks that the intention he set out to, like, the intention he had when he set out to make that movie, like, he achieved it. Yeah. And everybody who, I mean, this documentary, Remembering Return to Oz, is interesting because this guy interviews everyone involved in the movie, like from, you know, Brian Henson to Fairuza Balk to Walter Murch to like the little girl who played Ozma, like all these people. But it's a terrible documentary. It is. It's this guy who started a campaign on Kickstarter to make a documentary about Return to Oz, and he raised a few $1,000s and essentially just like turned up with his camcorder at a bunch of places. Like, it is so bad. Like, it is put together so bad. The sound cuts in and out. The shots are dodgy, but it's really, if you're just watching for the interviews, it's great. Like, the interviews are so interesting and like these people say so much stuff. So Remembering Return to Oz, if you're thinking about going and watching it, I'm just going to warn you, it's like
low production value.
It's low production value, but it is very interesting. The interviews are very interesting. Yeah, so that's just the gist of Return to Oz.
That was so good.
Was
so
it? I hope so.
No, it's great. It's
like a weird niche topic, but I've just been obsessed with this movie since I was a little kid.
It's just really funny you taking us through the film and just remembering how ridiculous it is.
Yeah, it is ridiculous.
But just how like it invokes like childhood like nostalgia as well. Yeah, I love it.
Like, we used to watch this with our dad and our mom, and this was like one of those special ones. Like, you have those movies, like you said, you watch The Wizard of Oz every day.
Yeah.
Like, you have those movies that in your family, like with your siblings or your parents or whoever, like Return to Oz is one that me and Rhiannon are like, man, Return to Oz, you know. Good. Yeah, that was one of our movies, and gosh, I love it. I love it way more than The Wizard of Oz.
Yeah?
Of course.
Yeah.
I don't know. You know, like I said, I find The Wizard of Oz weird and scary. Like, The Wizard of Oz, the movie, like I keep pointing out, you could consider it a completely different work of art and like piece of intellectual property to the books. It's like its own entity. It's different.
Yeah. Be like Wicked.
Bit like Wicked, yeah, exactly. It is. I would say that The Wizard of Oz is kind of like Wicked in that Wicked has taken the Oz universe and it was essentially like, I don't want to say fan fiction, but like veered off into its own thing and did its own story. The Wizard of Oz, the movie, is kind of like that because it is quite disconnected from the actual original books in that way. But yeah.
I loved it. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. Oh, I really loved doing that one. I want to go watch it right now.
Yeah, let's go do it. We can.
Okay, that was that.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Bye.
Okay, bye.
Thank you for listening to Just the Gist, a Just the Network production. Executive produced and hosted by me, Rosie Waterland. Produced and edited by James Joseph with additional production support from JTG team Kate Lever and Hayley Stavely and Acast legends Guy Scott Wilson and Simon McDermott. Looking for breaking news? It drops on the Just the Gist Patreon every Tuesday, along with a whole lot of other bonus audio, video, and behind-the-scenes content, which you can access for just $1, $1 a week by clicking the link in the show notes or searching Just the Gist Podcast on Patreon. Follow Just the Gist on Instagram and TikTok at Just the Gist Podcast, and watch the video version of every episode on our YouTube channel, also at, funnily enough, Just the Gist Podcast. Follow Rosie, that's me, in all of the places at Rosie Waterland. Want to give us a suggestion? Tell Rosie to stop singing so much? Email us at hello@justthegist.com.au. Thank you, as always, for listening. Now go say something impressive at a dinner party. Bye.